Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to this Chill with Jim episode where it is always business up top and the pajamas on the bottom.
Still got the pajamas.
Still rocking it. Still rocking the pajamas from the home office. So, I am your host, Jim McCarthy, and I am the client advocate for Strix, Louisiana. So, my job is to make sure that our clients are set up with the best equipment, the best software, and the best IT solutions to make sure that their companies are running at optimal efficiency. We also have David DeArmond with us.
Hey, everybody. I am David DeArmond, owner of Strix, Louisiana. And it's my job to make sure that Jim at least has pants on, at least.
Most of the time, I don't. All right.
It's a
So
full-time job here.
he's a busy man. So a little bit about Strix. Well, we believe there's always a better, simpler, more secure way of doing just about everything in this world. So what that looks like on our end is we're constantly searching for and adapting our processes to make sure that we do indeed have the best solution in place. We believe that part of this responsibility is to help educate our clients as well as others on how to best use their current resources, to bring awareness to current security risks, and just to kind of talk about the things that are happening in the IT world today. And so that brings us to today's episode where we're going to talk about this thing. Maybe some of you have heard about it before. I know that I hadn't before we brought it up as a topic on Chill with Jim, but it is Fancy Bear. So at first I just thought of a bear in a tuxedo with a nice tie on and maybe a
That's
top hat.
fancy.
Pretty fancy. You'd probably have
Yeah.
a cane too with him, just to, like the Monopoly guy. Uh, but indeed, that is not what it is. So actually, just to go ahead and kind of break the suspense here, David, tell us just a blip about Fancy Bear.
Well, Fancy Bear is kind of a rabbit hole once you get into it. So, what Fancy Bear is a group of hackers from Russia. At least that's every belief that it's from Russia. They are part of the Russian military intelligence, and it is their job to go out there and break into other people's stuff, perform um, cyber espionage, steal information from other countries, um, and cause as much havoc as they possibly can. These are some very talented hackers, and their effects have been widely felt throughout the world. So
Very
there you are,
interesting.
and they have a great name. I don't know that they call themselves that, but
I,
that they do go by many names. It seems like every company out there has their own name for them. But anyway, Fancy Bear is kind of the most well-known name for this group of Russian hackers.
very, very interesting. So today, actually, what we're going to do on the topic of Fancy Bears, we're going to go ahead and kind of treat David DeArmond like a special guest. So what I always like to do is kind of start with the why, also give a little bit of qualification to why we should be listening to David about cybersecurity. So, David, I wanted to start out with a question that relates to the why. And, what are some of the biggest reasons that you got into cybersecurity?
That is kind of a two-part answer. So there's the business case behind it, and of course, at Strix, what we found, we've always wanted to build stable computer networks for our clients, and what we found about 2 years ago is the biggest threat to a business today It's not hardware, because hardware has become very reliable. It's not software. Has gone a lot to the cloud. It's also become reliable when it's installed on the computer. The biggest threat actually is cyber attacks. So whether it be ransomware, it's business email compromise, it's phishing schemes, whatever it is, other vulnerabilities within a computer network, that was the thing that was going to most affect a client of ours. And so by necessity, we had to really start focusing on cybersecurity. If we were going to build secure networks for our clients, we had to know what was out there, what was going to be attacking them, and we had to protect for it. The other part is more the personal side, and I guess it's just a bit of my personality that I like to dig into things to understand how they work, to see if you can um, get get programs, get hardware, get anything to act in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended to act. And so, when I first started getting into computers, it was especially with Wi-Fi out there. I would see if I could break into Wi-Fi and well, how does it work and what information can you get? All my own Wi-Fi. So
That's
uh,
uh-huh.
Um, so it
I'm
really
sure.
just, yeah, really just that personal interest and curiosity that I have has fed into the market, and so it's created a very exciting time for me personally as owner of Strix, because we get the opportunity to play cat and mouse with these cyber attackers, the hackers out there, and I get to see what they're doing. Some of it's really cool. You understand how things work even more, but it's also fun to fight back and see, well, how can we block you? And then they come up with another way to get around, and so it's a lot of fun in that respect.
Awesome, awesome. Good information. I was going to ask you what you enjoy about cybersecurity, but you listed quite a bit there. Did you have anything else you wanted to add that you really love about cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean it's mostly that cat and mouse game. I'd say that's kind of the thing that I enjoy most, just watching it go back and forth. And I feel like whenever there's that kind of dynamic, you're really things progress really fast and in innovative ways. And so you just get to see some really cool, fun stuff, because the hackers, man, these guys, they are so innovative, and the things that they figure out are amazing. And then you see the response from the security companies and how they're able to come up with ways to protect and stop and catch these guys. It's just all of that intrigue, I guess, is fun. That's my reality TV, you know.
I think that's that Boy Scout in you coming out. You just
Yeah,
want to
maybe so.
figure it out. So you said this was a Russian-based group, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the cool things about being the host is that not only do I get to host these Chill with Jim episodes, but I get to do a little investigative journalism at the same time. So, David, I do have some information right here that says you graduated with a degree in Russian studies.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
So, how long have you been part of the Fancy Bear group? And tell us how you got it started.
Yeah, I gotta go. Sorry.
Oh, I had to bring that up. So, in fact, David does have a degree in Russian studies.
I do. Yeah, I took the non-traditional route to computers. I did go the Russian route and learn the Russian first, and then, like we always say, all Russians are hackers. And so it was really just a part of getting my degree in Russian that I also had to become a fancy bear.
I had to make that joke while we're on here talking about a Russian, espionage hacker group. I had to bring that up. So, well, you told us a little bit about Fancy Bear, but can you explain a little bit more about what cyber espionage is?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's James Bond stuff on the internet, right? Espionage, of course, is spying. So you see it most often with between nations, and so different countries perform espionage on each other, and they dig in and they're trying to get information and sneak around and not get caught, and it's all the James Bond types of things where you have these secret agents going and hiding who they are and finding out information. Um, and it's the same thing. It's cyber espionage. So it's based in the internet. It's and it's become so prevalent because most information is now kept on some sort of computer connected to some network, uh, and so the information is now in a cyber format, and it's natural that the espionage then moves into cyber espionage.
Interesting, interesting. Now, is there a difference between, when I was looking at some of the research here, I noticed that some of these groups use the word hacktivism. So is there a difference between cyber espionage and hacktivism?
Yes. So cyber espionage is typically state sponsored, or I mean, it could be corporate sponsored. You've heard of corporate espionage, so it could be corporate sponsored, but the point is that it's generally sponsored by some sort of organization. Hacktivism is a little bit different. They're not necessarily trying to go out and just get information for intelligence purposes to make decisions. They're trying to, just like an activist, they're trying to promote some sort of idea, some sort of change, and they use hacking as a means to do that. They may do it through denial of service attacks. They may do it by breaking into your servers and holding it for ransom. But the hacktivists, they want to be a little more flashy. They want people to know what they're doing because they're trying to make a point. Um, Cyber espionage, a lot of the methods are the same, but they're trying to be quiet. So the groups like Fancy Bear, they want to cover their tracks. They don't want you
Okay.
to know necessarily what they're doing. They're trying to do things in the shadows. Hacktivists are trying to do it out in the open,
Very.
without themselves getting caught personally, most of the time. But they want the world to know about their efforts.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. And then again, another thing I found along the way was uh, the Fancy Bear group has been said to use some forms of electronic warfare. Can you go a little bit into what electronic warfare is?
Yeah, I mean, electronic warfare is really a broad category, and cyber warfare is a piece of electronic warfare. Electronic warfare really covers everything that has to do with um, with electromagnetic forces, and so there are other things out there like directed energy weapons. There's the planes that fly around picking up information out of the air or blocking the ability for people to talk, or so anything that has to do with electricity and the electromagnetic fields, um, from a military standpoint, when they're using that to disrupt their enemy in some way, that's electronic warfare. Cyber warfare is just one piece of it. Obviously, we're talking about the internet, and so that's all electrons shooting back and forth all across the world. And so that is electronic warfare, but it's just a piece of it. The cyber warfare is just a piece of the overall uh, um, electronic warfare.
Awesome, awesome. So that hopefully that gives everyone a base of kind of what these terms we're going to be using throughout mean, and explains a little bit more into the depths of these attacks that we're going to be talking about. So when it comes to Fancy Bear, have there been some well-known attacks that they have been maybe pointed the finger at, or maybe they admitted to doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few. Probably the the one that's biggest is, of course, the DNC hack, the Democratic National Convention hack in 2016, in which they were fingered as the responsible party. There's been some other ones that they've attacked the Olympics multiple times. Um, they they have gone after uh, they've gone after the Ukraine a lot. There is active cyber warfare going on between the Ukraine and Russia, in addition to traditional military warfare going on there. But really, probably that DNC hack is the one that's most known because there's so much controversy around it. So it really caused a huge stir. And like you said before, I do get into conspiracy theories and that sort of thing, and there are a ton of conspiracy theories around Fancy Bear and the DNC hacking. So that's really fun to read about and watch.
I was reading about another one they did with a Windows update where they were able to really exploit one of the updates that Windows uses to do some malicious things on everybody's computers. That was back in 2016.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of things that they've probably been doing for years. We know when Vault 7, that's the hacking tools that the NSA used here in the U.S. And it got hacked, and the tools were released. What they found is that a lot of the tools that were being used, they've been out there a long time. They've been used, Windows exploits and those sorts of things, and they didn't. These intelligence groups, they don't necessarily tell Microsoft and Apple that, hey, we found a little hole here. They keep that to themselves, and they use it extremely effectively.
Wow. Some scary stuff out there. So are there other cyber espionage groups out there that have that are well known or that have a name, maybe like Fancy Bear or something like this?
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, there is another group in Russia sponsored by their military called Cozy Bear. So I I don't know why the Bears, but anyway, it's the Bears. Sorry.
The Bears.
So that Cozy Bear is another group just like Fancy Bear. What's interesting is that when we were talking about the DNC hack in 2016, when the company CrowdStrike came in and started doing forensics, and the FBI is doing their forensics to see who was perpetrating these acts. Cozy Bear was on the DNC servers even before Fancy Bear was, and from all appearances they used maybe similar ways, but they were completely separate. They weren't working in conjunction with each other. So that shows kind of how private and tight-lipped these groups are, because this is two Russian intelligence groups that they're both in the same place, and they've seen this throughout. They're both in the same place, and they're both getting in there. So yeah, there's of course Cozy Bear, some other ones, Lazarus Group, Cobalt Group. I'm looking for some of the Mage Cart. Mage Cart is a big one that have targeted online marketplaces, and they steal credit card information. So that's another group that's out there. Comment Crew, that's another one that you hear of pretty often. So yeah, there are quite a few other ones out there, and I think it's called oh shoot, it starts with an L, but the name's escaping me right now. The NSA group that it is kind of the American version of Fancy Bear. They have a name for them as well. That the name's escaping me right now, but yeah, they have a name as well.
Okay, so that we're not talking only Russia's doing this, right?
No, this is everybody. The Chinese are doing it. The Ukrainians are doing it. Yeah, I mentioned Ukraine and Russia fighting. Ukraine's fighting back, and Eastern Europe, that entire area over there, the Baltics, they've become very proficient in working uh, in the cyber world. They've built tons of infrastructure. They are at somewhat of an advantage to the rest of the world because they had no infrastructure before. So they decided 10 years ago to build the infrastructure, and they put in the newest, best stuff that they could put in. So they've built very,
Oh,
very strong infrastructures there, and they've used that to their advantage. And so it's happening all over the world. I mean, the English are doing it, the French are doing it, everybody's doing it. If you're not doing it, you're not cool.
yeah, all the cool kids are doing it. You need
Yeah.
to.
Right.
Okay, okay. Well, yeah, I see, you mentioned the Comet Crew. I see that they're a Chinese-based one. And the interesting thing about that group, or the groups in China in general, was they had a stance, China had a stance that none of this is going on. We are not doing any of the espionage that everybody thinks is coming from us. It's a group here, but they're not associated with our government. And then in 2013, they turned around and said, you know what? That's us, actually. That is us. And they started to kind of show their muscles and flex a little bit on, hey, we are doing this and we are very capable. Has that seemed to be the approach these days?
Yeah, well, that's common in military tactics anywhere. The U.S. did the same thing. For years, they were practicing the NSA and the military Department of Defense. They were practicing offensive cyber warfare. Okay, they were going after people. Vault 7 proves that. They were out there. They didn't admit it till I think it was around the same time that China is probably, China says, oh well, really we are, and the US is like, oh well, we are too. And and then they start fighting amongst themselves about who's actually doing better. But it's the same thing. You saw it with the nuclear proliferation. When countries were getting nuclear bombs, one of the things they do is a very open test of their nuclear bomb, and that is to prove to the world, hey, we have nuclear capabilities. What you don't necessarily see or hear about are all of the hidden tests that they've done for years. Usually when there's that test that everybody knows about, they know that one's going to work because they've tested it before. They know it works.
Mm.
They're proving, they are showing to the world, these are our capabilities. And it's a war strategy. You try to get the other side to make a move based on what they believe you have. And or maybe you make a mistake and you have to come out and say it. That happens as well, but usually it's just posturing.
Got you, got you. And actually, David, we did have David hop in. If you wanted to go ahead and make him a participant too.
I will.
Um, very, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I know that's the getting caught probably facilitates the, oh yeah, that was us. Caught red-handed. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that was us. So it's funny to hear that. You mentioned Vault 7 a few times. Can you describe a little bit more about what Vault 7 is?
Yeah, it's a tool set, and so what you see really with all hackers, individual hackers or hacking groups, they build a tool set. It's just like a mechanic working on cars. They have a bunch of tools, and these are the tools they use to work on cars. With these hacker groups, they're very specialized, and they don't necessarily want everyone else to know about them, because if the security companies know about these tools, then they know how to block them. They reverse engineer them. They figure out how to block them, and these groups don't want their exploits blocked because they use that to get into things. Um, so Vault 7 it was the NSA's toolbox, and they they lost control of it. It was the NSA was hacked, and and their tool set was released. It got posted up on WikiLeaks, which was I guess it depends on where you come from. A lot of people say, well, that's a great thing because it promotes transparency. It shows what a government's doing. The negative part for, say, a business is that now all of these other hackers out there that didn't come up with these ideas on their own, now they have a bunch of new ideas and they're able to spread them. And that's when, man, it spreads into the wild, and you start seeing huge attacks. I think it was the Eternal Blue, if I remember correctly, was actually an exploit in Vault 7 that nobody knew about until it was released. Once it was released, everybody had it, and that's one of those areas we preach all the time. You have to update Windows. You have to update Windows. Millions of people didn't update Windows. Microsoft found the exploit. They fixed it. They patched it. If you updated Windows, there was no threat. But if you didn't update Windows, and there's still millions of Windows 7 machines out there with this particular exploit, that Eternal Blue can get into your system. So and though that's what happens when these tools are released. When Vault 7 was released, it gave the hackers really an edge for a while, because they had a bunch of tools that the security companies didn't have.
Wow. Wow. So interesting. That's using their tools against them,
Yeah.
basically. Wow. That's so when you were mentioning, okay, so let's talk about the electronic cyber warfare side of things. Now, what I kind of can see in my head is are there ways for maybe a hacker to get into a system, like let's say it's a just nuclear reactor, and start to change the way that those computers are handling their processes? So maybe they turn off a safety feature, maybe they go in, there's these big businesses with a bunch of computers. Is that where they can kind of go in and use the computers against whatever's going on there?
Yeah, well, one that fits very closely to what you're talking about is Stuxnet. So Stuxnet was a virus that infiltrated an Iranian nuclear power plant. And what's interesting, that power plant had no network access outside of that facility. It was not connected to the internet whatsoever. They felt like they were safe. So what whoever did it, there are a lot of, again, conspiracy theories on who actually did it, but whoever did it was extremely smart and put a virus on a USB drive, and someone that was going to end up bringing their computer into that facility, plug that USB drive into their computer. It loaded a very small, very quiet little program, and it's interesting because that program, it's looking for its environment that it wants to infect, and if it doesn't see that environment, it's just going to be quiet. And so it got around any kind of antivirus or anything like that, because it was doing absolutely nothing. It was just sitting there. But as soon as that machine, that computer, was brought into the nuclear facility, the program said, here's where I want to be. And it infected and started shutting things down, like you mentioned, caused huge chaos. I mentioned the cyber warfare going on between Russia and the Ukraine, and you've seen the same things. There have been large scale blackouts that are known to be Russian military. And what they've done is infected the energy grid, the computers on the energy grid of the Ukraine, and they go in, they shut it down, and there's a lot of that is flexing their power. A lot of it too is the Ukraine has kind of become Russia's testing ground. So they test all of these tools and they see if they work. And that starts making you nervous, because we haven't really seen the US's testing ground that we know of. We haven't seen China's testing ground. We haven't seen the European countries. We haven't really seen their testing ground, but what's going on. So that, that's one of the big concerns, that if a traditional war flares up, we may feel it a lot more than what we would have felt it 20 years ago, because there's a pretty good chance that China or Russia or whoever it is has access to our energy grid, and they'll just start shutting things down. And are we prepared for it? Do we know it's there? Who knows? Because it's espionage, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's, they'll admit that they're doing it, but they're not going to admit to what they're doing. Um, and so how far have they gotten? How far have they infiltrated? We don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, and David Brin makes a good point. The events that we do hear about are only the things they really want us to know,
Yeah.
or they get caught accidentally, and then we find out about it. But it's a great point. So we're looking at some pretty big picture stuff here, David. Uh, as an individual, or maybe as a business owner, what are some of these effects that I'm going to feel from these attacks, or how can it affect me?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked a little bit about that. You know what they say about stuff rolling downhill, right? What starts at the top, and these are nation states fighting against each other, and generally the big corporations, they start doing it, or they come up with things, and as these tools are released or as they're found, um, the details about the attack are released, and so it starts trickling down, and a hacker that is more interested in the shotgun effect of blasting something out and seeing what they can pick up from it. They're going to modify the tools a little bit and use the exploits for their own gain, and so it just trickles down until you reach the point that, and what we see today, and why Strix has focused so much on cybersecurity now, is because it's affecting even small business. It's affecting individuals, and the protections are lagging a little bit behind. The attacks have come first. The protections are lagging behind. The protections are there, but they're so expensive. At least they have been in the past. They're so expensive and so complex and so difficult that a small business is unable to justify doing it. The cost is more than the attack, and that has changed now. And that's a big part of what we do, is we go find those providers that are out there that that are a little bit more on the innovative edge, and they're finding out how can we block these things for a small business for a reasonable price. And so that's a tool set that we've put together and that we continue to modify as we go along. And then, like we mentioned, it is warfare. you it is country against country. um, and so there is the possibility that should war spring up somewhere, we're going to feel it very personally at a very individual level, because another thing that the Russians did in the Ukraine, they shut down the ATM in a whole section of the Ukraine. They shut down ATMs, so people couldn't get money. You know, I know me personally, I don't carry a whole lot of cash with me, or I use my card, right? Um, so what happens when you can't use your card anymore? And that's the goal of a nation like North Korea. They're fairly small. They don't have a ton of money, but they have cyber warfare capabilities. And so what are they able to do as a small country? The technology, just like it is in business, it's an equalizer. You can take a small company or a small country and it can act big. So the North Koreans, if they shut down our energy grid, all of a sudden they're having a huge impact on the US, and they're a small country. Now, can the US fight back? Sure, but it doesn't mean we're not going to feel it, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be some terrible consequences behind it.
Wow. Wow. And that just had me thinking about, you know, the switch that we all did from our phones. So now hardly anyone has a landline phone anymore, which works without power. You could make a phone call without power. So now think of all the households out there that if the power is gone and the cell phone networks are down, we cannot communicate. And just how scary of a feeling that would be. And I know communication is one of the things that they, in warfare, usually they'll knock out communications fairly early because it does create such a problem. So just seeing all these puzzles start to piece together. With the attacks, have there been some kind of common factors that we've seen, some common ways for them to get perpetrated?
Well, I guess are you talking about the big guys or the little guys or
The
both?
bigger ones. I know quite a few of the bigger attacks I read started with a phishing attack, a
Yeah,
phishing
yeah.
email.
That's kind of the most common. I would say, um, and this is probably more of just speculation. My guess is that phishing is the one that we know about the most. I mean, the DNC hack, they said it was phishing. You know, someone on staff fell for a phishing scheme, and I think it was Gmail or the G Suite, and they provided their password, and then it infiltrated throughout. More details have come out about it, and that's all a little bit murky. I think phishing is kind of the one that we all know about, because it's easier to track. But my guess is the real espionage that's going on, the stuff that is in the shadows that we don't know about, it's using more vulnerabilities. It's using back holes. It's using almost every component in our computer, in our phone, in our electrical grid now came from China. And what they found out is the Chinese were embedding into the hardware. They're embedding communications back to China. So I think, to me, that's probably the bigger threat. We hear about phishing, we see phishing, but it's probably the vulnerabilities and the built-in communications that report back. When you control the supply chain of all of these communication devices, then you kind of control the communication. And that's why we've seen a huge shift, especially in the military, where they're getting away from Chinese components, and everything has to be built in the US now because they need more control over what's going on. It's a big reason that we're seeing the use of SIEM products now, which gather logs from devices, because a good SIEM solution will be able to get logs from a thermostat or any other IoT device, all these
Wow.
little devices that are just spread out, and those are used as footholds. Okay, you use a thermostat, and it sees the network and it looks for its little hole and it starts infiltrating, and it all came from a thermostat. Um, the SIEM product is going to see the logs, and it's going to see, why is this thermostat, every minute it's sending some sort of signal to Chinese, a Russian, a Ukrainian, to some IP address. Why is it doing that? It really shouldn't be doing that. And you can start digging in, and that's how a lot of these embedded this embedded code that's been found, that's how they're found, because it's the logs. The information has to be sent somehow. And so watching the logs has become super, super important. Seeing the traffic going in, and the artificial intelligence behind digesting all of that information, because you're talking about just floods of information, finding that needle in a haystack. How do you find it? And we use artificial intelligence to do it. But that's becoming more important. I see that as a trend going forward with even small businesses. Seems have been out of reach for small businesses for a long time. And so I think in the future, what we're seeing is there are innovative companies coming out. They're going to have SIEM solutions so that a small business can watch what's going on, because they're going to be used. They're going to be used to attack bigger targets, because DoD, all the big companies, they use smaller companies to do some work for them. And so the hackers, they'll attack the little guys and then work their way up.
We've covered some really great information. David Brin, if you wanted to come on and ask your question, that would be awesome, to get a little customer or attendee participation here. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in without the No, I do a lot of writing for managed services in technology. And what we started to explore and started to talk a lot more about is how that liability of maintaining and security is transitioning to the managed services or the cloud-based services. Um, if you guys are offering those types of services, are you mitigating your cost by basically providing those services to multiple clients, so that way there it's a little cheaper in the long run for you to be able to make it affordable for these not the smaller companies that may not be able to otherwise protect themselves?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what's happening in our industry, there are large distributors, and distributors today have gotten away from just distributing physical things. They distribute software as well. So the distributors are striking deals with the software companies like SentinelOne. For years, SentinelOne was one of the absolute best endpoint protection programs out there. But the cost of entry just to talk to them was like $15,000. Okay, so before you start paying to even protect your computers, you've got to pay $15,000. That's the minimum of what you're going to spend just to start working with us. And most small businesses, there's no way. They have to have such a sensitive information to make that make sense, that it was out of reach. But today we offer SentinelOne. We put SentinelOne on every single one of our clients' endpoints because our distributor Pax8 made a deal with SentinelOne, and now we can buy from Pax8. We get a great price on it, so we can offer it for a great price. And no longer are you talking about these huge bills in order to do it. And so that's what we've been focusing on. We scour and we look for these solutions, and we talk to other people in our industry to find those solutions, so that we can present really good technology to a small business that it was just out of reach 3 years ago.
One of the other things that kind of comes to mind, with all this, we talk about the just sheer explosion of the Internet of Things and how many devices are going to be networked, whether we whether we know it or like it or not.
All right.
What are security specialists and companies like yourself doing to sort of prepare yourself for this just tsunami of vulnerable devices? I did a piece recently on how they found this one vendor that did Bluetooth technology or something like that for manufacturing equipment. And this same device was used across, I think, 1 million devices. Yeah. And it ended up being a vulnerability that they caught, at a 0-day situation where they caught it before it was exploited, but it was out there for 5-6 years before anybody even realized that it was a thing.
Yeah, that's to me one of the biggest threats coming up. And the really difficult thing with IoT is the firmware is built in, and a lot of times they don't update it. The way that IoT was built for years was you just put it out there, and you just leave it. Now that is changing. The industry is changing with the Internet of Things, and so now you're seeing where there's the ability to upgrade these devices, but there's not a whole lot of space on these devices. There's not a whole lot of storage. There's not a whole lot of processing power, because they're very, very specialized. They do one thing and one thing only. So updating them is hard. Once the vulnerabilities come out, like you said, there are millions of devices out there in people's homes, in people's businesses, and in your pocket that they're vulnerable. And really, the only solution that I know of right now that is very effective is that same solution that is gathering the logs, and it's watching the traffic, because these devices still do create logs, and they do communicate. They still have to communicate information. That's the whole point of the Internet of Things, is to be able to communicate with your home when you're on vacation. You can turn the lights on, you can turn the oven on, you can turn it off. I don't know why you turn the oven on while you're on vacation, but you never know. but you can do all of these things remotely, so they have to communicate. So the log aggregators, and then after the logs are collected, the analysis of those logs, to me, that's probably, in the next 5 years, that's what we're going to be looking at, where Sentinel-1 wasn't available 5 years ago. But now a small business can get it. We'll see the same thing with the SIEM solutions, that traditionally it's been the big boys that have it. I think the cost per day for Azure at their first point, and their SIEM solution is called Sentinel, and it's a very good solution. But it's before you start getting any kind of price break and volume pricing on it, it's like $150 a day. I mean, how many small businesses can afford $150 a day to catch something that is not likely going to happen? But what we see in the industry is the chance of something happening is increasing, and so there has to be a solution. And we're seeing solutions coming out now that are less expensive, that and that combine maybe some other functionality, so that you get multiple pieces in one to protect a small business.
One other thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
What's the exposure rate that they're looking at right now with Windows 7 systems that are active and out there? And what industries are going to be really hit hardest by any vulnerabilities that are left behind as we leave Windows 7 unsupported?
I haven't looked at the specific number lately. I know the last time I looked, it was in the millions of devices that are still out there. One big area that is of grand concern is the medical industry, because a lot of the equipment that they run, it was built on Windows 7. The controlling software was built on Windows 7. Well, they'll spin these devices and the controlling software up. Maybe the company goes out of business. More than likely, they create a whole other device with a whole other system, and they quit supporting. I mean, Windows 7, it's been around for I don't remember when it came out. It's been out for 15, 20 years now. So if a company built a medical device 15, 20 years ago, it ran on Windows 7, that's fine. Well, now a hospital or a doctor's office still uses that device, but it doesn't work on Windows 10. So what do? Well, they end up leaving Windows 7. Honest to God, I've seen Windows XP machines out there in medical environments. It is scary, but that stuff is out there. It's very expensive to try to upgrade or to move to Windows 10, and so they don't do it. But medical information is extremely valuable to the black market. You can make good money with medical information. So I think that's one of the bigger. The other area is, like Jim mentioned, the electrical grids. Again, a lot of the process control software, it ran on older OS versions, and they're not necessarily updating them, and so that's where you're seeing these vulnerabilities come out, and there's no fix for them.
Great questions, David. Thank you, Dave. Dave and David. Do we have, does Carlene, Jason, anybody out there in Facebook world have any questions related, or just tech questions in general?
They've all turned their devices off.
Yeah, they're all afraid. Yeah. Talking to, go ahead.
Jim, sorry to interrupt you. You'd asked me the question about how does it affect us as individuals, and it hit me. I was thinking Jason over at Eagle. It hit me that we're working with companies now that work with the DoD, and so you see the you see these espionage, cyber espionage events going on. Well, they're attacking Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense is coming down very hard now on anyone that works with the Department of Defense. And what we're going to see in 2021 is you're going to be audited. If you do anything with the Department of Defense, you're going to have to go through the CMMC audit, which is it's what companies were supposed to be doing anyway. But the DoD is finding that not everyone, just because they say they're doing it, doesn't mean that they're actually doing it, and they need to verify that the smaller companies, their contractors, are going through the steps to protect themselves. And so that, that's something that we've seen several opportunities come up here, and places that of great need, that the smaller companies, they have to be CMMC compliant, and it means putting a whole bunch of protections in place. It means putting procedures and plans and technologies in place that a small company used to not have to do.
Great point. Great point. Talking about the IoT, Internet of Things, just thinking about all the devices that do connect to a network. So, my roommate actually has a grill that has a Bluetooth device in it that connects to our network, so he can change the temperature of the grill when he's not next to it. And just to think of, thermostats, light bulbs, all of these things reporting these signals back and forth, just all over the place.
Baby monitors, door ring security systems, doorbells, like all these things that are just out there that we don't think about. We plug in and we start using, and we're like, all right, we're cool. And then, like you said, they're just sending information.
Yeah, one piece of advice that I'll throw out there, and it does make things more complicated. My guess is we're going to see companies starting to do this by default. But if you do have those devices at your house or your business, a very smart thing to do is to segment your networks. So you create a separate wireless network for your IoT devices, so that they only stay talking to each other. And you don't put your computer on the same network as your thermostat, because again, that thermostat could be looking for a computer to infect, that it can then spread into other areas. If you put a firewall basically in between, or you just segment the communications, then again, you're lowering the chance of automatically being infected, because a lot of these they're bots, they're robots, and they're mindless. They do what they're told, but they're running all the time. They don't stop, and they're looking for that opportunity. And as soon as you give them that opportunity, they're going to move, and they're everywhere. So, keep your network segmented, create separate wireless networks to run all of your IoT devices versus the network you use for your computer.
Great advice. Great advice. Is there anything else? We got a little bit more time, but anything else I can do to protect myself, maybe protect my business? What are some of the ways that we could set up for some security?
Well, I think it's, having the good hygiene. It's a lot of the same things that we've talked about over and over. You have to watch for phishing. You have to know the warning signs. You have to pay attention to who's this email coming from. And today it's even harder, because first the bad guys are getting into legitimate email, and then they're sending you the phishing. So then you have to look at where the links are going, and you really have to have a mindset when you're working on a computer that everything you're doing is trying to trick you. And so it means you have to be careful. So the good hygiene, using the password manager like we talk about over and over. If you can use a VPN, that's a great thing to do. Keeping your computer updated, all of those things that we say over and over again, there's a reason we say it over and over again. It's because that's where the threats are coming from, and they're easy to do. The thing about easy to do is that things that are easy to do are also easy not to do, and that's what the bad guys are counting on. They're counting on all of these people not doing the easy thing and leaving themselves open.
So I'm just gonna not have a phone anymore. And can I
Well,
remotely work without the internet, David? Is that possible?
I sent
No.
you that text that I got from FedEx today. I mean,
Yeah.
I got a phishing text like 20 minutes before I jumped on the call, and it was just, hey, click here for your package, and I'm like, I didn't order a package.
Yeah, we know someone very recently that reached out to us, and their daughter was targeted. Now this isn't by necessarily a cyber hacker, but it's a cyber bully, and using tools infected her phone and was able to pull photos off of the phone, was able to access the camera, and they call that stalkerware. And so we actually got the name of that software from one of our frequent listeners, Brad Proctor. It's called stalkerware, and that gets loaded on your phone. You don't know it, and it is watching and listening and reporting everything you do. And this cyber bully started posting publicly on Twitter all of this information, and what it did to that family and their feeling of being secure. Was it was really it is tough. It's tough talking to them, and them coming under the realization that somebody's sitting there watching them all the time. That's a huge invasion of privacy. And probably, I mean, I don't know if they brought it and did the forensics and all of that. We certainly haven't heard anything more about it, and probably won't. But what it probably came from is a Twitter conversation where someone posted a link, and I get I don't know 4 or 5 texts a week with a link, and I'm going to win money or I'm going to lose weight or whatever it is. There's a link, and you follow that link. iPhones can be infected. Android phones can be infected. So if you have a weird text, even if it's from someone you get a weird text and it's got a link on it, don't just click it. Call them back. Say, hey, did you do this? Because you can't even trust to text them back and say, hey, is this really you? Because someone could be spoofing their phone and say, yeah, I sent it to you. Dang right. So yeah, got to be careful.
Wow. Well,
Question
it is
everything.
Halloween. It is Halloween, so why not scare the crap out of everybody listening?
That's what I'm going to dress up as for Halloween, a smartphone.
A smartphone.
I was just telling Jim this morning, I got a spoof very similar to that. I got a call from a 703 number, and I texted it back, and I was like, stop calling me. And it texted me back like, I didn't call you, you called me. And turns out that whoever's spoofing used both of our numbers to call each other, and they're using it for robocalls or what have you. Right. That's the first time I've actually gotten a response back from a robocall. Like, no, you're the one calling me, and you called me like 5 times. I'm like, oh, that's not. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy what they have access to now.
Oof. Well, that is pretty creepy. Yes, I had I had my own cell phone number call me just a couple of weeks ago. So I have my number saved in my phone as Jim McCarthy here, all one word. And I get this call and I look and it says, Jim McCarthy here is calling you. And so I was calling myself on the phone that I wasn't on a call with.
No, and the doctors told me that it was not normal to talk to yourself. See, it's perfectly normal. Take that, doctors.
That's it. That's it. You heard it here on Chill with Jim. So we're going to go ahead and wrap some things up here. This has been a great wealth of knowledge here. And I think, you opened our eyes to quite a bit. It's going to be very interesting the next few years to see just how things play out and the new ways that we're going to be scared out of our minds. So, David, we have a topic for next week that's maybe a little bit more lighthearted.
Well, maybe not. We are going to have a special guest next week. We are going to have Vanessa Graham, and I'm going to post the information here. Vanessa Graham is a virtual CFO. That stands for Chief Financial Officer. So if you pay attention to Chill with Jim much, you know, we do about half of the episodes on cybersecurity, but we also go out and we find special guests like David Brin. David Brin was one of our special guests, and we talk about other things as well. And what Vanessa is going to be talking to us about is how do you basically save your money or work your money as a business in these times of uncertainty. What are the things that you can do to protect yourself financially? We talk a lot about what you can protect what to do to protect yourself technologically. She's going to bring us some really good information about what do you do financially so that your business is in good shape through COVID, through recovery, and through whatever comes next. I mean, I sure hope that 2021 doesn't try to show up 2020. But you never know.
Me too. So that'll be next week. We have a special guest. You know, if you guys would like to sign up, we'll go ahead and drop that information in the chat for you.
Here we go.
All right, there it is right there. Otherwise, it's always the same chill time with the same chill network. So I would like to thank everyone for coming out and participating and supporting us. All those in Facebook land, we appreciate your help and support. So reach out anytime to us. Is this okay at strixla.com is a good way to contact us with any questions that you have along the way. And we always like to help out where we can. So once again, I appreciate you all coming out. I said y'all, that's weird. And we will see you
I think
the second time.
That's twice. Yeah.
I'm turning into a Southerner.
There you go. Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. Only took 11 years. So we will see you next week and enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Thanks.
Bye,
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you a lot. Me sitting in.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the questions.
No problem.